Hello Internet! Welcome back to another episode of Penelope Draws Manga. So recently I finished watching Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first time, and I loved it so much. A few of my friends who had seen it before watched it with me, so today I decided to draw them as benders. So I asked my friends what kind of benders they would like me to draw them as, and my friend Isaac, no hesitation, was like, Earthbender. So I told my other friends, Earthbender's already taken, Isaac got it, you have to pick something else now because I'm not drawing two of the same. Next I asked Isaac what kind of pose he'd like me to do, and he chose this karate pose where he has one hand over his head in a block, and the other hand I guess could be doing a block or a hit, I don't really know. But regardless, this was a very fun pose to draw. Well, actually, I'm going to amend that last statement. This was a fun pose to draw, but it was also very challenging. I don't often draw people with their hand over their head, so drawing the arm as a continuation of the body was very difficult for me. It was a fun pose to struggle with, I would say. In the end, I did end up moving his hand from over his head down to by his side, more because I felt like it was almost hiding his face. I don't know if that makes sense. And Isaac also has really curly hair that I wanted to show. It would help the picture look like him. So I was having trouble drawing one of the hands in this sketch, so I just copied the one hand and put it on the other arm. It actually worked surprisingly well, even though I ended up not using it. So now I'm moving on to the clothes. I gave him a kind of Chinese style split front rope thingy. I don't know the technical term. But it was fun drawing kind of flowy clothes for a change of pace. I really enjoyed thinking of where the fabric would be bunching and folding and then poofing out because of the belt. Yeah, like I already mentioned, this was a pretty difficult pose for me to draw. I kept having to readjust his legs and his feet because I felt like they weren't making sense or were far enough apart for the karate move that he was doing. And then I even had trouble with the face later on. I don't know why. This one, out of the 3 pictures I'll be drawing for this video, gave me by far and away the most trouble. So now I'm working on a bit of a cleanup sketch, although this picture had so many cleanup sketches and all not in linear order, so I don't really know what number sketch this is anymore. But this right here is definitely my first attempt at the face, which I quickly abandoned. Instead, I worked on this foot, drawing it detached from the body, and now I'm connecting it. Even though I haven't added toes to it yet, I think it looks a lot better than it did before. I tried giving Isaac this Earthbender soldier hat, but I ended up scrapping it for the same reason that I scrapped the arm. It was hiding his fluffy hair. At this point, I'd drawn pretty much everything else that I would need to for the sketch, so there was no avoiding the face any longer. I think part of the reason why I was having so much trouble is that I wanted to draw these pictures in the Avatar style. I wanted to draw them in such a way that it looks like I could just take these pictures and plot them into a screenshot from Avatar and make them look like they belong there. I adjusted his head and neck area because it was looking really not quite right and kind of weird looking. And after the adjustment, I think it looks a whole lot better, especially that collar. I changed the collar to look more like Toph's collar actually, and I think it looks way better. I finish up the body adjustments and move on to his hair. First I draw this kind of mushroomy shape so that I know kind of where it should be, and add a little bit more curly, and it's just about finished. Next up is my friend Bobby. He asked to be drawn as a waterbender, which is funny because it was actually the only one left. Surprisingly, even before I told them that I would only draw one of each element, they each chose a different one. Out of my 3 friends that I'm drawing for this video, Bobby is the only one who didn't tell me what kind of pose he wanted me to draw him as, so I just kind of picked one and went for it. I hope he likes it. Well, whether he does or doesn't like it, the pose I went for is kind of a upward block type pose, but it's not a true upward block because neither of his hands are fists. I thought this would work better for bending because it's like he's almost holding the water in his hand even though it's, floating. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but you know what, I think it looks kind of cool, so we're gonna go with it. So now I'm drawing the clothes, and actually it was a lot of fun to draw these clothes. They're super bulky and fluffy, And honestly, I just kind of wanted to wear one myself, even the whole time I was watching the show. It just looked like it would be super cozy to play in the snow in. And all that fur that's poking out on the outside, I mean, that fur is on the inside too. It must be super cozy. I added these 3 orbs of water floating around him, kind of like he's juggling. I thought it'd be an interesting way to show off the water, instead of the usual ribbon that waterbending is portrayed as. Also, I drew his boots super big and bulky. I mean, he needs to keep his feet warm in the Arctic. I actually drew both of his hands separate from the main body and closer to the reference picture because I thought it might be easier to see what I was trying to draw if they were larger and closer to the main reference, and I think that it turned out better than it would have if I'd done it normally. Also, the water orbs weren't looking quite balanced and centered, so I redrew them and then positioned them back with the drawing. Next, I will be drawing my friend James. I almost didn't even need to ask him what kind of bender he wanted to be. I just kind of figured he'd choose Firebender. Also, this would be a pose that he would 100% make if he actually was able to. I mentioned this earlier, that I wanted to make these pictures look like they could just be plopped right into Avatar and look natural. So I had to make the line art look the way the line art in the show actually looks. This was extremely difficult for me. As an artist who uses almost exclusively rough line art as my actual line art, using this smooth type style was extremely challenging for me. I also kind of hated it the entire time I was drawing it. I was like, this doesn't look very good. I just want to not draw it the way I normally draw. But I was hopeful for the end result, so I kept with it. In the rare instances when I do use regular smooth line art, I like to use a weighted pen. It gives more depth to the picture. But in Avatar, they don't have that, so I decided not to use that either. I went with a hard-edged, non-weighted pen on basically the smallest setting I could get it to. And the line art is finished. Oh my goodness, when I finished drawing the line art, I finally understood why people like to use smooth line art. Instead of filling in the base colors like a coloring book, like I usually do, I could just color drop entire areas. It went by so quickly and it was so much fun. I had a great time adding the color. It was so easy, and frankly, it makes me want to try doing smooth-edged line art more often. I just can't get over how easy it was. So next I'm moving on to shading, and I did something different for shading than what I normally do. Normally I make a new layer and set it to multiply because I can just use the same color throughout the entire picture and it makes it a lot more cohesive. Avatar doesn't really do this, so I opted not to as well. Instead, I selected colors from around the image and darkened them a little bit, then you applied them as shadows. This gave the image a more easy to draw, easy to animate sort of feeling. I didn't really like it much at the time that I was drawing it, but I kind of like it now. Looking back on it, I really wished I'd spent more time on James's right hand, the left hand as we're viewing it. It just looks super weird. I wish I'd spent more time on it. Also, James has never actually had hair long enough to put into a bun like that, but all of the Firebenders have one, and he liked the idea of it anyway. In fact, he wishes that I'd made it a little bit bigger so that the rest of the hair in the back would be in it too, but I told him no. This picture's stretching the truth even as it is. I'm not gonna lie, this has been some of the simplest shading I have drawn in I don't even know how long. Selecting the colors was a bit of a hassle, but not too difficult, and really it was kind of fun. I don't think I'll use it again though, unless I'm doing another draw in a style other than my own video, mostly because I don't feel like it's super fancy. But if you guys would like to see me draw something else in the style of whatever it is I'm drawing, please comment below. Overall, I really enjoyed working on this pose and using the shading techniques that I just described to you. And let's move on to the next one. And we're back with Bobby. Actually, I'm just realizing this. I never sampled any colors from screenshots in the actual show, so I don't know how accurate they are or if they would fit in. So I guess I could try later and see what happens. I don't know. Maybe I'll post the results after all this. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see me draw my friends, or somebody else if you'd like, into anime or other show screenshots. Once again, the shading process for Bobby was much the same as the shading process for James. I just selected the color in the area and then colored over it with a slightly darker version. Out of the three character designs, this one was definitely the easiest for me to draw. It was big, it was fluffy, it was bunchy, and frankly it covered most of the form. The only parts of this image that really gave me trouble were figuring out how to make the fur look kind of fuzzy without going into too great rendering detail, and also drawing his hair. It took me a while to figure out how to shade that goofy little star looking thing on Bobby's head, but once I figured it out, I think it looks pretty okay. Yeah, so these friends did watch Avatar before me, although we started watching it together about, I'd say probably 6 months ago now, but I got super busy and wasn't able to continue watching it with them, and they kept going without me. So over Christmas break, we started from the beginning of book 2 and basically sped through the second and third over Christmas break. It was super fun. Even my dog watched it with us, although I did have to bribe her a couple of times with some treats. There are a lot of things I would like to say about Avatar in this video, but for the sake of spoilers, I'm not going to say anything. Next, I'm going to move on to drawing the elements. Of all of the things that I did for this video, this was definitely the most fun. I felt like I could do more of what I wanted and make it look more the way I wanted instead of sticking as rigidly to the way the Avatar actually looks. Although I definitely did reference Zuko's fire. Drawing this is just super fun, and I love making it blurry and glowy. Yeah. Next, I drew Bobby's water ball thingies. These were probably the most time-consuming one to figure out, because even though I did reference some water from Avatar, I still had to figure out how to make them look kind of transparent and like water. Unfortunately, I forgot to film all of it, so we'll just be moving on to Isaac's boulders. I personally don't think I'm very good at drawing rocks, but I did my best, and I think it looks sort of halfway decent, so I guess we're gonna go with it. As with most things, it started to look better after I added the coloring and the shading, so that's what I'm doing now. Shading was basically exactly the same as it was for the main picture. I did add some highlights though. I thought they needed a little bit more visual contrast, and overall I think the rocks turned out pretty good. Without them, it just felt like the picture wasn't exactly completed and it needed a little something else to finish it off, and the rocks finished it up pretty well. In the end, I'm quite pleased with the result, even though this one definitely took me the longest. Coming next to challenge the blind bandit, we have Isaac the Earth Commander. I think he turned out pretty well and I'm pretty pleased with it. And then we also have Paku's next student, Bobby the Water Persuader. I had a super fun time drawing the water. So not least, we have our up-and-coming circus performer, James the Fire Boss. And that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. On the screen I have some links to my previous videos, and I hope you'll stay tuned for my next episode where I'll be drawing my dog, Mochi, as a gamer. I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye-bye!